Good morning. So let's just begin either standing or seated, whatever is more comfortable for you. But we're going to begin first with the breath, inhaling and exhaling through your nose if you're able. Start to feel how the breath changes the body. Maybe in the moment, what part of the body is moving to accommodate the breath, but also over time, as you take a few of these breaths, begin to notice how comfortable, malleable, open to your day your body becomes. Okay. Now let's bring the hands up and connect around the wrists, right? And just sort of roll around the wrists, not letting the hands touch each other, but also not letting the fingers touch each other. Both the fingers of one hand to the other hand, but also the fingers of the same hand. Just see if you can keep them apart. And then the next time your thumbs point down, palms face out, pause, and bend the elbows, swinging the fingertips in towards your chest. And then point the hands up towards the ceiling and roll around the wrists again. So point down, in, up, roll around. Down, in, up, roll around. And just begin to make that movement smooth, fluid, whatever words come to mind, so that you feel less stiff. Some mornings it'll take a few more repetitions to get that sense of looseness. Now that you've got this movement down, without thinking too much about it, go ahead and reverse the direction. And you can do that as long as your head doesn't get in the way. Your body will know what to do. Remember, fingers aren't touching each other. I just caught my right hand trying to form a little fist. And then one more time. And then just pause. You can let your hands drop to your lap or by your sides. I'm just going to leave them up so you can see. But just pause for a moment and feel the circulation through your hands, through your fingertips even though we didn't do anything with the fingertips, right? But we feel that pulsing in the fingertips, in the palms, in the wrists. It's pretty remarkable. Okay, now let the arms drop so that the weight of them is held by something else. And just take a few little shoulder circles. Nothing too taxing on the brain now. Just this is something you know how to do. A few little shoulder circles around in one direction and then go in the other direction. I always wake up with tension between my neck and my shoulders, so good to do a few of these just to wake things up. Okay, now we're going to be a little more specific with our shoulders. Go ahead and clasp the hands almost like you're shaking hands with yourself and bring that fist over one shoulder. As you bring the fist over the shoulder, feel how you're stretching the outside of the opposite shoulder. Okay, and then do that on the other side. So you're kind of pulling this arm across you so that you feel that stretch on the shoulder. Just a mild stretch to begin with, right? And then let's add an extension of the elbows here. So you're going to straighten the arms forward and then bring the fist over one shoulder. Straighten the arms forward, bring the fist over the other shoulder. Go slowly here, no snapping back and forth, okay? Go nice and slow. Somehow my screen went down a little. And you're welcome to stay with us, especially if you're healing up something in the shoulders or they're just feeling really tender today. But if you'd like, the next time you bring your hand over the shoulder, see if you can bring that fist over your head and then over the other shoulder and then straighten. And then go the other way. Shoulder over your head, other shoulder, and then straighten. And if that feels okay, maybe you start to bring that fist not just over your head, but behind your head, and then the shoulder, and then straighten, and then shoulder over your head, maybe even behind your head, shoulder, and straighten. And then whatever version you are doing this morning, see if you can make it smooth. And I invite you to notice how moving the arms really affects a lot of things. So it affects the neck, the shoulders, the chest, the back, all the muscles between the ribs, affects your breathing. And we're going to go one more time to each side, whatever that looks like for you. Once you've extended the arms again, just go ahead and release them down. Whew. Notice how that feels. So now you've got some, not so much sensation in the hands, but now you've got the buzzing moving up the forearms to the upper arm, to the shoulders, maybe even across the back, the chest, the armpit area, maybe even into the neck a little bit. So speaking of the neck, we're just going to take some very gentle head turns. Look over one shoulder, and then come back to center. And then look over the other shoulder, and come back to center. Now, if you're connecting this with the breath, I like inhale, center, exhale, turn. And I'll tell you why in a moment. Inhale, center, exhale, turn. So for me, inhaling center isn't where I get a lot of discomfort. It's the exhale, turn part. So I imagine inhaling here, I'm inhaling all the goodness here, and then when I'm exhaling, I'm releasing the discomfort. I'm releasing that stiffness and sometimes pain. Last one. And then inhale, center, and then just pause. Okay, so now we're going to move through so that was turning the neck side to side, but now we're going to move through the neck up and down. So you're going to start just by dropping the chin to your chest, and then let your shoulders drop. So you're kind of in this hunched position, really opening up the back, the upper back between the shoulder blades. And then slowly, as you come up, I want you to push the back of your head into an imaginary headrest or a wall, and then feel that lift your chest up. And then we roll the chin back down, let the shoulders drop, let the chest drop, and then push the back of your head into an imaginary headrest, and lift the chest, lift the chin. Exhaling as you go down. Inhaling as you come up. And that's not because one direction has more discomfort. For me, I get pain in both directions. It's more because that just feels appropriate to exhale into that kind of coiled up position and inhale into this open position. Let's do just one more. And then inhale, bring your head back up to center, kind of neutral, and see how that is for you. Okay? So now we're going to move into the hips. And to do that, I'm going to recommend that you come to standing. I find that's a more efficient way to work with the hips. So start with your feet about hips, well, actually shoulder width apart. Let's do shoulder width apart. And place your hands on your hip bones, on the hip bones themselves. And keep your knees fairly soft. And then just begin to tip over to one side and then go forward. And you're only going as far as you can go without feeling a lot of sensation. And then tip over to the other side and then go back. Right, so right about there is where I start to get a gripping sensation in my back, and then I start to feel this pooling in the front. So I want to back off a little bit from there. There'll be time to go deeper. So side, forward, side, and back. And I'm just exploring the edges of this movement. Right now I'm not really moving the hips. The hips stay put, and I'm circling the torso around them. Don't worry, we'll get to the hips in a moment. Okay? And let's do just one more circle in this direction, and then we'll reverse it. So we'll go forward and then to the side, but now we're going around in the opposite direction. Side and forward. Side and back. Side and forward. And the hips are not moving. My hands are there to kind of remind me to not move my hips. They're really good at gathering information. Okay, last one. Good. Now we're going to come forward and just pause for a moment. Now we're going to let the hips move in opposition to the torso. So as my torso goes forward, I'm going to let my hips go back. As my torso goes to one side, I'm going to let my hips go to the other side. And as my torso goes back, I'm going to let my hips come forward, side, back. Now I'm talking about the hips. Side, forward, side, back, side. And the knees stay soft. They can be really bent to a little bent, but definitely don't lock the knees. And you're just exploring, how does this feel today? One hip may be more talkative than the other. We're going to go around just one more time. And then we'll switch directions. So we'll go side. Remember, the torso goes in opposition. Hips forward, torso goes back. Hips side, torso goes opposite. Hips back, torso goes forward. And then start to move around. I find first thing in the morning, I cannot get my hips to be smooth. It just doesn't work. So what I'm aiming for is just a little less clunk, a little less clunky in the hips. So a little fewer of the clunks and the really noisy clacks in through my back and my hip joints. That's what I'm looking for. It's not going to be quite as smooth as what I get out of my wrists or my shoulders. Last one. Oh, that feels good. And then we'll come back to center. And just notice how that feels. Okay, and then step the feet right next to each other. I'm going to turn to the side. You don't have to, but I just want you to see this. So feet right next to each other. Put the weight in your heels. If your balance is a little tricky, you may want to put your hands on a wall or the back of a chair. So we're going to slowly bend the knees, and keeping the weight in the heels means that you have to bring your hips back and your head forward. Just don't do that too soon, right? So don't go this and then knees. So I want you to do knees, then hips, then shoulders. And then you push up, straightening the knees, then the hips, and then the shoulders come in alignment. So bend the knees, push back the hips, push forward the chest. And then push the heels against the floor to straighten the knees, straighten the hips, bring the shoulders into alignment. So knees bend, hips go back, chest goes forward, knees straighten, hips come forward, shoulders align. Do that just a couple more times. I'm feeling how far down you can go. And noticing also how the knees feel today. Okay, and then come back up to standing and just pause. Whew. Feeling the breath return. All right, and then just shake out the legs. All right, let's come into a little bit of spinal twisting. Feet about shoulder width apart. Grab a great big tree, whatever is your favorite tree, redwood, oak. We have live oak outside of my house. And turn the center of your palm to face the center of your chest. Fingers relaxed, knees slightly bent. Take a breath in. And as you exhale, rotate ribs, elbows, and then head. So it goes ribs, elbows, head. And then come back, head, elbows, ribs. Nope, that's wrong. So take a breath in and then rotate ribs, elbows, head, come back, elbows. Take a breath in and rotate ribs and elbows and head, and then come back to center. Other side, ribs, elbows, and head, and come back to center. Exhale as you twist. Inhale as you return. Exhale as you twist. Inhale as you return. Try not to move the hips. If you bend the knees as you exhale and twist, that will help you to determine where your legs and hips are in space, right? Because if you notice that one knee is jutting forward of the other knee, that's a good sign that your hips are offset. Exhale, twist. Inhale, unwind. One more time to each direction. Inhale, unwind. Exhale, twist. Inhale, unwind. And then just lower the arms and feel. So twists are really good for evening out the asymmetry in our spine. And what I love to do after a twist is a nice side bend. So we're going to start our side bend just by gently dropping the ear to one side, letting this hand slide down, and then letting the top arm come up, bend the elbow, and then just sweep this arm overhead. And notice that there may be a tendency to kind of roll forward here to avoid the side bend, maybe because it's painful or just new. So see if you can, even if it means you have to go up a little higher, see if you can almost turn the chest towards the ceiling. And then from there, push and bring the arms back out to the sides, head back to center. Start with the head to the second side, ear drops, hand drops, side bend. Let this hand smooth over the ear, not quite touching. Again, notice if you're rolling forward or not. Keep it open, and then push into the feet and bring yourself up. And we're just going to go side to side this way. See if you can keep it fairly loose and not quite so concerned about perfection. And maybe that's a good theme for your day today. Stay loose. Don't worry about perfection. I like the exhale here and then the inhale coming back. But if you find that there's a different way to do it that works better for you, please, by all means, take that. Let's do one more to each side. If you really are enjoying this, you can keep going, but just watch that you don't overdo. And then come back to center. And you can bring the feet maybe right under the hip joints themselves, and just pause, kind of feeling into your body, noticing how that is for you. Stacking up the joints and noticing how that feels. Okay, so now we're going to come into a sustained forward fold called Prasarita Padottanasana, or straddle fold. So separate your feet wider than your shoulders, almost as wide as your wrists, and turn your feet parallel to each other. And I'm going to show you from the side here. So from here, you're going to take a breath in, and as you breathe out, go ahead and fold halfway down. And this could be where you stay today, maybe putting a chair or a couch underneath your forehead. Or you might decide to go a little deeper, maybe bringing the hands to the calves, to the shins, or the ankles if you can reach them, or to the floor. Wherever you decide to land in this pose, I want you to be able to sustain it for a few minutes or for a few breaths. So just pause wherever you are. And I like to kind of start high and then give my hamstrings and my inner legs some time to open up. Okay. Now, wherever you are, position the arms in such a way that you can start to walk the feet a little bit closer together. Right, so if you can keep your hands on the floor and do that, great. If you need to bring your hands up, do that instead, okay? So feet about the width of your yoga mat at this point. And then just pause wherever you are. Hands could be on your thighs, hands on the floor, wherever that ends up being. Breathe. And see if you can reach the arms towards the floor, maybe bringing fingertips on the floor, maybe just reaching. And in this reaching, elongate your spine. Elongate your spine. You could even put your hands on a wall, if that works better for you, or hands up on the seat of a chair, or on blocks. So what I want you to feel is from your hips to your fingertips, you're creating the extension required in downward facing dog. And in fact, let's now move into our downward facing dog. So planting the palms flat to the floor and stepping the feet back. Start with the feet wide apart and the heels up and the knees bent. Push the hands into the floor. Reach the hips back and find that same extension. Then from there, begin to lower the heels and straighten the legs if that's possible. And breathe. Now, for some of us, this is as close as we get to an inversion. So really important to find a way to be in this pose for a while so that it doesn't hurt the wrists or the shoulders. So if that means you need to put your feet up on something like blocks or your baseboard, please do modify so that you can hang out in this pose for a little while. It's so valuable, especially first thing in the morning. Okay, and then go ahead and bring your knees down and sit back, child's pose, releasing your hands, your wrists, your shoulders, and just pause. Okay, now we're going to come into a pose. I'm not sure if it has a Sanskrit name. I call it the solid gold dancer because in the 80s there was a TV show called Solid Gold, and at the very beginning there was a dancer that would come sliding towards the camera in this pose, and that's what this always reminds me of. So you want to make sure that you've got some padding for your knees if your knees are sensitive. I happen to have a very thick mat here, but you may need to put down some extra cushion for your knees. And you're going to sit with one leg in kind of a butterfly position and the other leg in a hero position. So like a Baddha Konasana and a Virasana together at the same time. And then bring the bottom of your foot up against the knee or the thigh, that area, okay? So this is our starting position, and you might notice that your hips have to do some interesting little maneuvers to make this happen. Don't worry, we're not going to be here for very long. All right. So we start by taking one hand out so that we're beginning to create some length from our Virasana, our hero knee, up towards our hero hip, up towards our hero shoulder. Very similar to what we were doing when we were working with the ankle, okay? So you may need to lean this hand a little further back to get that to happen depending on your hip. And then you just reach this arm overhead and consider that same length that you were looking for in your Prasarita Padottanasana, in your forward fold. So you could stay right here, or you could start to pick the hips up. If you pick the hips up, I recommend stepping this weight-bearing hand in a little closer so that you can get some leverage to bring the hips up and this arm over. And then really feel that length from the knee, across the hip, across the chest, the armpit, all the way to the pinky finger. And then slowly lower. So it's a little bit of a back bend, side bend, twisty thing. And then we'll go to the other side. So one leg in Baddha Konasana, butterfly, one leg in Virasana. Okay? And then we just start by taking the hand. It's a little bit of a diagonal from the hips, so that you can start to feel this alignment of knee to hip to shoulder, right? And then from there you reach the arm to keep that length. So this is where it feels a little bit like a side bend. And you can stay here. This is beautiful, opening up the front of the hip. Or if you're going to put weight on the knees, bring your weight-bearing hand in, pick the hips up, and then reach overhead and breathe. And then slowly lower. Good. And take the legs in front of you now. And just bring your hands underneath the thighs, kind of a seated version of child's pose. Let your head drop. Just take a few breaths. Okay, we're going to do some work on my back, but before I do that, I'm just going to set my prop right there. So I'm going to come onto my back. And when you're ready, come into your Shavasana, your relaxation pose. For me, what I love, since I have my headstander here, I love to bring my legs up on my headstander. It's a little lower than a chair, so it's perfect for my leg length. So a footstool might be good for you, but if you have longer legs, you may need something taller. And this just really allows my abdomen to relax, the inner thighs to relax, the legs, the whole leg, the feet, everything just softens. And then you can place your hands in any comfortable position that works for you. Close your eyes. Allow yourself to breathe in and out through your nose with the least amount of effort possible. Stay here for as long as you like. And when you're ready, slowly begin to move, shifting to your side, and slowly bringing yourself up to sit. And then just take the time to pause and feel this beautiful transition, this beautiful doorway into the rest of your day. Take a breath in. Draw the hands to your heart, full of gratitude, full of love and compassion and possibility. Thank you. Namaste.